Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, excuse me for interrupting your conversation, Supervisor. I didn't think so. Yeah, but, welcome to the Wednesday, October 26, 2016 Placer County Transportation Planning Agency meeting. We will begin our meeting with the flag salute. I think I'll go ahead and lead you in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now if the clerk would be kind enough to call the roll. Is this a good time for you? Okay. All right.
Here.
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 Oh, Travis here. Wow. Welcome. Now I'll ask for the approval of the minutes for September 28th.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman?
I will second.
Moved and second to approve the minutes of September 28th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One abstention? Two abstentions.
I believe if we don't have a unanimous vote, we need to do a roll call under the new rules.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
Yes.
Joyner. Abstain. Bueller.
Aye.
Trevus.
Yes.
Wheeler.
I gotta abstain.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
You can.
Don't have to.
Buell.
Yes.
Guys don't trust us? All righty, thank you. We'll move on to item D, agenda review. Is there anything on the agenda that needs to be corrected or changed? Are you with us, Mr. Trevus?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much for assuring that.
Oh, geez, I'm trying to run a meeting here. Is anybody in the audience have anything on the agenda that they would wish to address? Okay. I'll ask for, well, there's just a review. We don't need to. Public comment. Now is the time for any member of the public that wishes to address the directors on any item that's not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Lee Bastian, Sheridan Mack, and the latest question we've been getting is when we're going to finish the 65 bypass, because we've had several accidents recently and a couple of head-ons in that area because the people try to drive 80 miles an hour in the 55 zone. And I had a near miss.
Wow.
I had to move over to the shoulder to let somebody go by me. And he went by me, and we had an accident north of Sheridan, and he got a quarter-mile past Riosa Road and came to a dead stop because they were all stopped.
Oh, wow. Well,
So that's the biggest question we're getting in the Sheridan Mac. The other question, I'm going to switch hats, and I'm representing Placer County 4-H. And this Saturday, we're having our 21st annual Make It and Take It Craft Expo at Gold Country Fairgrounds in the Sierra Building from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. There is no cost to get in, but there is a cost to do the crafts from 50 cents to $5 per item, and it's from 9 to 3. I have left some flyers outside on the table if anybody's interested.
all righty. Thank you, Leah. On that first item, just give us a call on November 9th, and we'll let you know how that's working. And then as far as the, I have it on my calendar for the 4-H crafts. Will there be cookies?
There is a snack bar.
Oh, good. All right, good. All right, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? We,
You've been up to Lake Tahoe lately? You're in a great mood.
I'm still up there. Now is the time to adopt the consent calendar. Are there any items on the consent calendar that need to be taken off and discussed? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I'll ask for approval of the consent. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The motion is passed. We now will open up our public hearing regarding our annual unmet transit needs. We're going to adjourn as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. and convene,
Oh, hold on, not quite yet. We're still PCTPA until after this item.
oh, okay. Item G, is that it?
Item G, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, let's continue with, as PCTPA on item G. I was confused.
Great. Good morning, Chair and Board of Directors. Want to do a short overview of the unmet transit needs process before we open the floor to public comment. Just to provide a little background and context on this process. So today's hearing is a requirement of the Transportation Development Act. The Transportation Development Act is one of our primary roles, administering that act as well as implementing it as a regional transportation planning agency. We have the responsibility to implement and administer the requirements, which do include developing annual apportionments for local transportation fund and the state transit assistance fund that our jurisdictions in turn use for street and road projects, transit purposes, bicycle and pedestrian projects, and these funds also serve as match monies for grants. It also requires us to annually conduct a publicly outreach-driven process to find out how the existing transit systems are serving our residents. This is a forum that allows residents from all over the county to share their thoughts on public transit because many of our riders do utilize the Placer County Transit Services to get to Roseville, in turn ride the Roseville Transit Services, as well as our other programs such as Health Express. They also utilize the My Rides program. So as a requirement of the Transit Development Act, it serves those purposes to receive the comments, but also look to find out how might we fine-tune our existing transit system within Placer County. There is a Social Services Transportation Advisory Committee that has been formed as required by the Transportation Development Act. This committee is comprised of users of the transit system as well as providers, those who provide services for the elderly as well as the disabled within Placer County. This committee is the first to review the report and recommend the report summarizing the comments that come from this process and make the recommendations to the PCTPA board on the findings. The findings that the PCTPA board may make include there are no unmet transit needs, there are no unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet, or that there are unmet transit needs that are reasonable to meet. So when we finalize this process, compile a report, and bring this back to you in February, those are the three different options that this committee, or that this board will have to weigh based on the recommendation provided by the Social Services Transportation Advisory Committee. The outreach process I mentioned on the prior slide, this is a process where we look to our partner agencies, the social service agencies within the county, to help spread the word. There are many different forms that we use to get this information out because no one source or no one method will work effectively on its own. Flyers, this is an example of the flyer that was distributed to our agencies and the local agencies within the county. We also use the email distribution lists, email distribution that we've compiled over a period of time from participants of this process. Also getting information out in the local e-news for the cities and the county. We look to our partner agencies to help spread this word. Social service agencies such as Placer Independent Resource Services, the Placer Collaborative Network are also great partners in spreading the word to their clientele and the other groups and agencies that they work with within the county. The Tahoe North Truckee Transportation Management Association is also a great partner in the north, or I guess say the east part of the county, to help spread the word to their base in that area. Social media, that's a new area that we've taken on last year or so to try to spread the word. And as I heard last year when I was in Tahoe, if it was not in the newspaper, it did not exist. So that being said, we've run 9 different advertisements, and these are not just those that go in the public the public notices in the back session, but are actually 5-inch by 5-inch display ads that go within the body of the newspaper, hoping to allow others to, if they are not on social media, to still see the ad. In doing so, they're able to attend 1 of 5 different meetings. This is the 5th of those meetings to share publicly their comments, but we do receive and have received over the last several years many of our comments through email, through our online survey, even through our voicemail system, and we even get some in writing through mail still. So amongst all those methods, we look at the comments and review them. Now, not every comment that comes in will fall in that third category that I mentioned earlier, that it is an unmet transit need that is reasonable to meet. Because of the guidelines that are in Transportation Development Act, operational type comments of there should be a bus stop at this location instead of that location, or the bus should turn right instead of left here at this street, or comments that relate to passenger amenities are not necessarily covered under the unmet transit needs process. But through the last 8 years, there's been a number of different refinements to the transit services in Placer County, and new projects that have been implemented. And some of those are shown here on the slide. Two that aren't on the slide that will be occurring this fall are the Game Day Express bus service that is being sponsored by the city of Roseville. They'll offer game day buses to the new Capital One Center in downtown Sacramento, and also increase in frequency on the Tahoe Truckee area regional transit system in the Tahoe area that will move from 60-minute headways to 30-minute headways. So those are some of the changes, and those are actually comments that we've heard in the prior years that are being implemented by the transit operators in our local jurisdictions on their own merit. So with that, in closing, this is our schedule to implement and carry out the remainder of the outreach process. That will close this Friday. We'll go into report mode where we start reviewing, comparing the comments that have came in, and then we'll be bringing the report back to this board in February, and also allowing one additional opportunity for comment at that point in time. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this item? Seeing none, I will then open up the public hearing and take testimony from anyone in the audience. I'll ask you after you finish speaking if you would sign in on the desk there. So
Okay, good morning. I'm Tank Miller, Executive Director at Placer Independent Resource Services here in Auburn, serving people with disabilities. And I continue to facilitate the Best Step Transportation Collaborative, which is an informal group of service providers, transit operators, and members of the public, anyone who cares to come to the meetings and talk about transportation. And we meet monthly and have been meeting for about 20-some years monthly. So the comments that I'm presenting today are, some have come in through my agency, some have come up in conversation at those transportation meetings, monthly meetings. The most recent ones, the county health clinic in DeWitt closed, and that's now being operated at a different site next to Seniors First on Loxley Lane by a contracted agency. And the facility is uphill from the street, so the bus stop, for them to walk from the bus, they have quite a trek uphill to get to the building across the parking lot. So we've heard some concerns from some seniors and people with disabilities about if there's a way to, nobody has an idea of how, but somehow to, I guess there's a driveway that one is uphill and the other is more level, and I guess locating the stop maybe at the level driveway or something of that sort. Those were just the feedback that we've had. I also had, actually yesterday, an individual with a significant disability that lives in Colfax, uses a power chair, has a very rare type of disability and needs to see a specialist in Sacramento. That specialist is only in Sacramento 1 day a week for limited hours because of this area of specialty service that he provides. So we're having difficulty figuring out how to get her to this appointment. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because we're going to continue to work on it, but I think it's an indication of the fact that we're going to hear this more and more often. People, as they age, develop disabilities, and our aging population is rapidly expanding. So I think it's just a harbinger for the future on that issue. Some folks that have been using the Right Hand Auburn shelter have asked about having access to the subsidized bus pass program that they've heard about, and they don't know how to get that information or how to determine if they're eligible to participate in that program. So I think it's an education issue, maybe actually to the agency itself. Getting requests for more weekend service, people that want to work maybe outside this area, and the buses don't get them back. If they take the job, they have to turn down jobs sometimes because the bus is not going to be able to get them back at the end of their shift in the evening or out at the appropriate time so that they can maintain their work schedule. And also some recreation, weekend recreation, and in some cases faith activities that where the event is not necessarily able to provide transportation for people that want to attend. We've been trying for a long time, and I don't know where we are in the process. We've been working on it with the transit operators for a universal ADA identity card that people would go through an application process, that it would be the same card for all the transit operators. And once that type of a process is in place, the law requires that they be given reciprocity in other jurisdictions. So if they travel to the Bay Area would accept their ADA certification card from Placer County to be eligible to use paratransit in the Bay Area. So it's a very important process for enabling people to travel outside the local community. So I don't know if we've concluded that yet. I've missed a meeting, but hopefully that's still in the works. A lot more public education. We still find that people don't know that they can get a transfer on the bus to transfer to a connecting ride. So marketing and education on how to read schedules, how to use the bus, how do you get a transfer, how do you use it when you get it. The fact that they don't cost anything. A lot of people don't ask for them because they think they're going to have to pay another bus fare in order to get the transfer from the driver. And the rural transit study that was completed, we'd really like to urge that those recommendations that were in the final report be funded and be launched as pilots or demonstration projects, and that if in order to make them reasonable to meet under the formula, if the short-range transit plan needs to be amended in order to allow that demonstration project or one of those demonstration projects to go forward, then we would ask that the jurisdiction that would be cognizant over that short-range transit plan do make that amendment so that project could go forward, because rural communities need transit. Thank you.
Thanks, Tink. Yeah, sign in. Thank you. Morning again.
Morning, Lee Bastian, Sheridan Mac. We've been having a lady who can't drive, and we don't have any transit service. We have my rides, but we have no drivers in the area. And Health Express doesn't go to Yuba City because that's where her medical appointments are. So what she does is she hitchhikes to Wheatland to catch the bus, Yuba City bus, to go to her medical appointments in Yuba City, and then she hitchhikes to Lincoln, to Walmart, to get her groceries. And she's been stopped a couple of times by Lincoln PD because she is hitchhiking and been warned. So we just need some transportation. I know it's in the rural transit study is proposed, when we would ask that you'd look at that.
Thanks, Lee. Anyone else wish to address the agency board during this public hearing? That's it. Then I will close the public hearing. And any other comments from board members? Director Trebus. You certainly can. Turn your, excuse me, you did. Oh, you did. You got it. Okay.
No, I don't know.
You're lit up.
Somebody else is. There we go.
You got two. I got two. Okay, we got you.
Stereo.
Ready?
You can only take one of you.
When you were mentioning the additions to the list, you mentioned the going from some 60-minute headways to 30-minute headways in the North Tahoe area. And I know that the PCTPA only comes toward the basin to a certain amount, and I can understand the 267 program. When you went with the 60-minute to 30, that really is mostly within the basin, and is that still a valid thing to be putting in here?
So you are correct that it is primarily in the basin area between Incline Village and Tahoe City. So that does fall outside of the PCTPA planning boundary. I think what I was wanting to highlight was that there are changes that are occurring, and so maybe for this body that may not have been applicable, but again, just highlighting what services have changed.
Well, with that in mind, then I'd like to add another one that changes that are occurring that have been in very high demand, and that's longer service each day to have evening service for the same reasons that Tink was mentioning, as workers as well as other transit users can get home after 5:30 at night in the off seasons. Right now there is evening services in the highlight seasons, but not in year-round. And that program is being started with one season funding anyway for the end of winter to summer. And but that's a real high demand, is to have more more hours of service in the evening. That and both of those eventually, the need will be to try to have those on year-round basis. At this point, we don't see that, and TART is being able to provide them on a more limited. This will be the first winter for trying the 30-minute, and it's not throughout, but it's just in the winter again and not in the off seasons. So I think those two need to be continued to be recognized as ongoing needs for some time in the future. Thank you.
Director Nesbitt, did you? Oh, okay. Director Hesh?
Yes, please. Did you happen to get the comments that I made to you about a late bus to Colfax?
I did get the comment about having some form of bus service getting back to the Colfax area at 9 p.m. or around 9 p.m. at night.
Great. I
for
didn't get a
commuters.
chance to double check with you ahead of time. Just wanted to make sure. And the rationale for that is that if you're trying to return to Colfax from any kind of a major trip, let's say a rail trip to Santa Barbara or up the coast or down the coast, you have to catch the 4 o'clock bus to Colfax or you're stranded. And that's true of even commuters. There's no transportation to Colfax after 4 o'clock. So it makes travel by rail very difficult because none of those tie together. So make a simple trip to Santa Barbara and you have to have a 2-day trip to get back to Colfax. Now, I don't know about you'll have to study the traffic count or the actual users on it, but I wanted to bring it up so you're all aware of it. And I did my own survey, by the way, because we didn't have enough interest, I guess, in Colfax to really have one. And I came up with the same things that we've had before. Highway 174. Keep wanting to say 267 because of my old days up there, but nonetheless. There's continuing interest in the route between there, but we've already been down that route, excuse the pun, and the ridership just wasn't there. So and I'm sure that's still the case because there's only 3 people asking for it. So that's all I have.
All right. Any other comments? No? All righty. Do you have enough information and know what you need to address?
I do.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, now is the time that we will adjourn as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and convene as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. And we'll move to item H, the fiscal year 2016-17 budget amendment number 1.
Good morning, members of the board. Today we're requesting that the board approve amendment number 1 to the fiscal year 16-17 budget for the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, or we'll use the acronym CTSA. So for several board members that may be somewhat new, the CTSA is an agency that was created by this board to provide and coordinate social service transportation within Western Placer County. Attachment 1 shows the operating budget for 16-17, and operating revenues are projected to decrease by about 4%, or around $72,000. That's offset slightly by revenue increase on the local transportation fund, as well as a grant that we received from the Federal Transit Administration through Caltrans to continue to provide senior and disabled services. That service is the Health Express service, and the grant helps us provide service to the rural portions of Western Placer County, for example, the community of Sheridan and other areas north of the urbanized area. Operating expenditures total about $1.68 million, and that's an increase of about 3% compared to the June budget, with a projected year-end surplus of just around slightly less than $22,000 to be carried over into the 17-18 budget. The primary increases in the operating expenditures is due to the board's approval in September of addendum number 1 to the Health Express operator contractor services agreement. If you recall, we came to the board and we showed that there was an increase, but when you looked at that increase in the context of where we were in providing Health Express 4 years ago, and we were paying somewhat close to $500,000 to 2 providers to provide this service, the overall cost of the increase of the Health Express contract through addendum number 1 was significantly less. It was around $377,000. So that results in an increase in the operating expenditures. We're also adding some funding to the transit planning costs. We're continuing consultant services to, as Tink had mentioned, we are working with the operators to coordinate and hopefully come up with a uniform policy procedure on how we deal with ADA access and individuals. So that is being studied through a planning contract that we have with AMA Transit Consulting. And then lastly, because of the nature of the way the expenditures and the operating revenue is worked out on the spreadsheet, there is sort of a formula with respect to the operating reserve. And because operating expenditures increase, we kick in more into the reserve so that we have money set aside to cover in case of, in the future, that we need to rely upon the operating reserve for various expenses. And with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Any questions? Dave, your light's on, I think that's your, no, it's down below.
Oh, geez, you got secret buttons.
Yeah.
All right, seeing anybody in the audience wish to address this item?
That one.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back for action.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the item under the consolidated CTSA. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Hearing none, we will now adjourn as the Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency and convene as the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency and take up item I, administrative updates to SACOG and PCTPA Memorandum of Understanding.
Yes, good morning, Vice Chair Holmes, members of the board. This is a fairly straightforward item. It amends our memorandum of understanding with SACOG to reflect, first of all, this was last updated in 2005, so some of the terminology is outdated. It refers to a Federal Transportation Act that has been, I think there's been 2 or 3 versions since then, and updates that. But the main reason for this is to add in the provisions that are shown on page 44 and 45 that allow us to use state planning money to provide that to SACOG, which we are required to under existing agreements, for their doing things like air quality conformity and traffic modeling and the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, things that are required in their role as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, essentially the federal designation. And so it gives us more flexibility in using our funding. essentially, this language exists already in the master fund transfer agreement that we have with Caltrans, and that SACOG has with Caltrans, but it doesn't exist in the agreement between SACOG and PCTPA. So it just checks that box, and this was based on a Caltrans audit. It has already been considered and passed by SACOG at their October 20th board meeting, and a couple of the members of this board actually were there and have voted on this already. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wish to address this? Yes, Tink, please come forward.
Actually, it's probably a question, but intermittently discussions come up about the 511 service and how transit operator schedules in this county are not available through 511. And I understood that SACOG was going to somehow put that information into the 511 system. So I don't know if that's part of the agreement you're talking about, but I'd like to see that happen.
It's not part of the agreement that we're referring to, but we will certainly follow up on that.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Tink. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're being asked to adopt the updated memorandum of understanding between SACOG and PCTPA as shown in Amendment 1. Or is there anybody that would like to make a motion? It's been moved and seconded to move the item. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. We will now move to item J, Executive Director's Report.
Yes, I only have a couple of items here. I wanted to make the board aware, if they are not already, that SACOG has selected a new executive director. Mike McKeever is retiring at the end of the year, and they've selected James Corliss, who has most recently been the executive director of Transportation for America out of Washington, D.C., but has strong roots in California, used to work for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is the metropolitan planning organization out of the Bay Area. So it's my understanding he won't actually be starting until April, though I guess getting here from DC. And so Kirk Trost, who is the Chief Administrative Officer, is going to be filling in as Executive Director in the interim. Also, as an FYI, the Executive Director at the El Dorado County Transportation Commission is also retiring at the end of the year, Sharon Scherzinger, if you know her, and I was asked to sit in on the interview panel for her replacement. A lot of good candidates. We expect that they'll make a decision sometime in November. So some new faces around transportation coming in next year. I also wanted to again mention the elephant in the room, the transportation sales tax Measure M that is on the ballot. We're 13 days to go to find out whether we'll have funding for some of the key transportation needs that we have. I have been working with my staff to make sure that should this pass, we'll be able to hit the ground running. The list is now 54 items, including we're putting out a request for proposal on financial advice this week that is contingent on the sales tax actually passing, so we'll be able to work on doing the bonding that would be needed to front load some of the key projects like the 8065 interchange and Highway 65 widening. And we would also look to put out a request for proposal for design services on the auxiliary lane project, which, if you recall, that's the 5th lane that would be going westbound on I-80. The lane that drops off at Douglas would go all the way out to Sacramento County, and then on the eastbound side, one of the lanes that drops off as you're going just east of Highway 65 towards Rockland Road would continue on and become the part of the off-ramp at Rockland Road. That would actually be a double ramp there. So we're doing what we can to hit the ground running, and you could see a very robust agenda coming in December, and just as a reminder, our next meeting is a combined meeting for the November and December board meetings, which is typically what we do. Otherwise, you end up the day before Thanksgiving and right there by Christmas. So that is scheduled for December the 7th. So that could be, depending on how things go on November 8th, a very robust agenda. So that concludes my report.
Okay, any questions, for Celia? Okay, now we'll move to item K, board direction to staff. Any direction? Seeing none, your informational items are in the packet. And unless there's any further, anything to do further, I'll ask for adjournment. All right.
Thank you.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.